Good day, brothers and sisters. Another important message today. It seems the painful irony of the universe continues to roll on as it always has and always will. The day after I recorded the last video, or Space Panther and I serendipitously recorded the last video, the Orlando event happened, the Orlando tragedy, and this is extremely sad. And there's a lot to this story that I don't think a lot of people are really picking up. And I'm going to do my best to peel back this onion and explain my understanding of what's going on. I'm going to do my best to do it in a way that is grounded in all the facts, and that I'll try my best not to offend and inflame people, but I'm going to fail, and I'm sure some of you are going to be offended at this, but that does not mean that it is not true nor grounded in fact. In fact, these things are very true. So I'm going to start with kind of the surface of the story. If you hear snoring in the background, that's Hooch the Wonder Pug. He's taken a long nap today. It's pretty warm, and so he just passes out for hours on end. And, you know, Hooch brings me to the importance of this, which is, you know, we live in Long Beach, okay? There's a huge gay community down here, and we love it, and we think it's fantastic. You know, some of the crosswalks, instead of being just white, they're rainbow, and there's rainbow flags everywhere. And we recently had the Pride Parade down here, and it was wild, very colorful, to say the least. And Hooch got more love than he's had in a while. You know, not to say that he doesn't get love, but these folks loved Hooch so much. And you know, the universe has been so imbalanced and hyper-dominating masculine and submissive feminine, you know, and basically it's interesting that we have now this kind of social resurgence of the LGBT community, which in my mind is kind of the universe balancing the equation. We have men reasserting their divine femininity, and we have women asserting their divine masculinity, and we have this confluence, you know, whether it's gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual, like, it's people kind of gravitating back to that balanced core of sexual energy, which, you know, really is the spiritual essence of our species. That's where all of our power comes from. And I have learned to see the rainbow as a symbol of this bridge among our species, okay? We have different stripes, we have different colors, we have different paths and experiences and tribes and histories and ancestries, but we're all part of the rainbow. These are our bridges that we build amongst each other, and the rainbow symbolizes the bridge among all of us, okay? Whether it's sexual identity, racial identity, class identity, all of us are connected, and the rainbow represents the bridges in between those absolutes, okay? Blue is different than green. Green is different than yellow. All of these have their absolute identities, but they are all also part of a spectrum. And so it's important to realize the paradox. And I think that, you know, the reason as an anarchist, as a libertarian, I'm totally cool with the legalization of gay marriage and everything that comes along with that is because it's human emotional freedom, all right? People deserve to have the ability to express themselves, and no one should ever be able to take that away. There are certain cultures in the world that do not accept of such freedom, and there are others that are more tolerant. And, you know, one thing that is great about living in the Western, you know, just the Western developed world is that we have transcended a lot of those patriarchal, you know, hierarchical, just controlling and dominating aspects to sexuality and, you know, just our identity in general. Women and people of different races have come a long way, and that's a good thing. We are moving forward as a society, but of course we have these little hiccups like these incidents. So I've actually made notes for this. This is actually going to be a 3-part video because there's just so damn much to this, and I can't really do it all at once or my head's going to explode. So the Pulse Nightclub in Orlando, basically very proximal to their gay pride event, and, you know, as I mentioned, there's been a whole gay pride event here in LA and across the nation, but of course It's very accentuated in places like Florida and Southern California, simply because there's more people willing to celebrate that type of thing. So we have this kind of tactical, coordinated, planned attack on this nightclub Pulse in Orlando, and it's extremely sad. The number of people, I mean, 50 people is a lot of people. This is extremely sad. And, you know, countless more wounded, but these are all people who were loved by their friends and family, and they won't be seen again. And that's tragic. This is a tragedy. No matter what the true story is, this is a tragedy. It's very, very sad. And Omar Mateen, so this first video is focusing on the shooter and exactly who this guy is, or was. Is son of Afghan immigrants. Omar Mateen, on the surface a Muslim. You know, his dad made comments talking about how he saw two men kissing in the bathroom while he was taking his son in there, and got very upset about the fact of this. He was a security officer. He was a security guard, and he worked for a company called G4S, which is actually the world's largest private security firm. They guard nuclear facilities. They are presently guarding the Royal Mint in England. They guard a lot of very high-value targets, and that company is plugged in to the national security state, the intelligence apparatus. You know, they get these contracts because they're very, very close to the intelligence agencies. So that's very suspicious, just on its face. He had a security officer license, and he renewed it 4 times, and each time that he renewed that license, he had to pass a federal background check, and he also had to take a psych exam, and he passed those background checks each time, and he scored above average on the psychological exam. Alright, so this is kind of, well, I'll get to that in a second, but yeah, so he was a security officer. He passed multiple background checks and passed a psychology exam with flying colors. He was above average. Obviously had mental problems, and something more is going on behind the scenes, you know. And this is kind of where we get to the hidden identity of Omar Mateen. Now the knowledge is, you know, kind of out that he was a covert, you know, homosexual. He was gay himself. So we can speculate about what his kind of twisted inner conflict of identity was and what his real motivation is. He was plotting the attacks for a long time. His wife knew about it, and then she will probably be implicated and, you know, charged with something in this, because she knew that he was about to attack somewhere. You know, he was scouting out Disneyland, he was scouting out this club. I mean, so he was planning it, and he may not have direct ties to Islamic State, but it's clear that he was radicalized somehow, mainly online. I believe he did go abroad to Pakistan, and you know, he picked up, you know, some elements there. We don't know the full details, but he was radicalized online. You know, he picked up a lot of Islamic State material and propaganda, and you know, beneath the surface of him passing the background check, security guard, like, you know, having a family, all this, beneath the surface, something very dark and evil was taking place. Okay, and so this is kind of, a lot of people, one of the main narratives that's being spun as a result of this tragedy is the gun control thing, and we've heard ad nauseum the gun control, people wailing and whining after every single mass murder that if only we could take the guns away, some people would still be alive. You know, in certain cases that's more easy to argue, but in this one, honestly, if you are a person who is arguing for gun control as if it would have stopped this attack, you are so far off the mark, I can't even put it into English words. And there's so many of you out there, you know, I don't mean to make this a me versus you, but really though, if you're saying that gun control, having more background checks, having a psychological exam would inhibit guys like this, he passed the background checks 4 times. He was a licensed security officer. He passed the psych exam. He had access, no less, through his employer to highly advanced weaponry, even if you made it illegal for the citizenry, the law-abiding citizens of this country to not have those weapons, he would have had access. Okay, he was licensed security guard through the biggest security company in the world. So if you're saying, oh, maybe if he passed another background check or had to take a psychological exam, he did! What the fuck are you talking about? Wake up and realize the facts of the case before you start spinning some political bullshit, okay? If I would be willing to concede that gun control might have helped something if he was just some random guy and, you know, bought the most, like, locked and stocked crazy assault weapons he could find, and, you know, and, like, you know, but he and maybe he was obviously mentally unstable. People like to throw out these straw man arguments. Well, do you think we should sell weapons to retarded people? It's like, no gun owner would even do that. Are you serious? How stupid do you think gun owners are? I mean, it's this cultural divide, the red versus the blue, but truly, the Second Amendment is not where our rights come from. I have a natural right. You have a natural right to protect yourself and your family and your loved ones from anyone that you deem a threat to your safety. And that is a God-given right. That comes from natural law. That has nothing to do with the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment just enshrines that natural right. Okay? And I will defend myself and my loved ones by any means necessary, using any tools that I have available to me. Okay? And this was a gun-free zone at the Pulse nightclub. Like, you know, they had armed security that's, you know, failed somehow. But this again illustrates the flawed thinking when relying on the police to just stop crimes and respond to situations instead of private armed security, is because they fail. Inevitably, they can only respond to it after the fact, and, you know, they failed to prevent this. And that kind of leads me into the next topic. So I'll close out this video with just the summary that this guy, Omar Mateen, had a lot going on behind the surface. He was an overt Muslim, a covert homosexual. He was working for the world's largest security firm with ties to the CIA, the Department of Homeland Security, high-level government agencies all over the world. And to say that gun control would have prevented this or any attacks like it is absolute nonsense. And if you're one of the people that, you know, in emotion, I understand the emotion of it. If you're one of those people that just lashes out and thinks, you know, how many more times? I urge you, sincerely, please rethink your stance on this, because it does not make sense. And if you try successfully to disarm your fellow citizens, it's not going to prevent a single crime whatsoever. In fact, violent crime and homicide has been on the decline for the last 20 years. There are half as many murders, homicides, as there were 20 years ago. Violent crime, homicide is going down, 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 baby, and yet because of these mass murders, because of this media hype around all of these events, people think that we're just on the brink of chaos and things just going to shit. No, the world is getting better, guys. It really is. And these are anomalies that we have to explain somehow, but they do not reflect a rising trend in violence. They are in spite of a declining trend. So we are getting better as a society, we're becoming less violent, but we gotta root out the source of this mass violence. And it is not rooted in, it's not rooted in because he was a gun nut. It's not even rooted in Islam, and that's what I'm gonna get to a little more in this video. Even if it is related to Islam, there's a lot more going on. So that's the close of this video, and on to part 2.